Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Glidden. Welcome to our special episode of The Forge, part of our Path Breakers series of podcasts. I'm super excited today to welcome Erica Volini to the Forge podcast. Erica, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for
I'm sure,
having me.
absolutely. I'm sure you get a lot of requests on your time, so I appreciate that. I have a long list of questions to go through. Before I get started, please tell me, what are you up to? I heard you're a golfer. Is that true? Are
That
you?
is true, but a really bad golfer. Yes, my husband is like an amazing golfer and he has a lot of patience. So we golf together, but I enjoy it. And
That's
I
great.
always tell, yeah, I mean, being like a former New Yorker, people are always like, why do you golf? But I'm like, beautiful location, exercise. I don't care because I'm not good and I'll never be good. It's a very relaxing
Well,
endeavor.
we will talk a little bit about New York at some point, but yeah, I'm a terrible golfer, and I still love it. But my friends who play with me struggle a little bit, but I still enjoy it. It's just
Yeah.
and there's a lot of walking involved, so that's always good. So before we get into the heart of the podcast, I just wanted to start out with a couple of questions that I ask everyone.
Great.
The first is about what I call life moments. So everybody has them personally and professionally. And I'm just curious, are there one or two things, either personally or professionally, that impacted you early on in your career that have really been one of those watershed moments that you can look back at and point to?
Yeah, I would say two. I'll give you one personal and one professional. Professional, and this is definitely like my watershed moment. I was leading a huge project for a large pharmaceutical company, and um, we were really close to going live. It was payroll. I mean, and the night before, the controller decided not to go. He never really believed in the project, and it was it was just a complete failure. And after it was probably my first, and it just was so public, and so like really personally impacted me. I just was like devastated. And my mentor took me out to dinner. And I said, well, I guess the silver lining is I'll never be asked to do a large, complex global payroll project again. And he said, quite the contrary. He said, I think that's all you're going to be asked to do. And said, I don't understand. And he said, you now know what not to do. You've been through it. You've seen what failure looks like. You're completely poised for success. And it was a complete watershed moment because it totally reframed my perception of failure as something that I never used to talk about to something that I almost lead with in conversations because I now understand that it actually is what makes me better the more I'm able to see the ups and downs of work. So that was definitely a watershed moment for me and it impacted me personally. I think it changed my whole persona at work because I think I became more accessible to people, more human to people as a leader, as a manager. It was a really important pivot. And then, personally, um, you know, just and also along those lines of being more human, with kids, um, you know, having a miscarriage, and talking about that. It goes to failure, but that's not a failure. I don't look at it that way at all. But going through that and talking about it and being able to be relatable, especially as a leader, and you can relate to your team because at that point, especially with women, it's not about level, it's not about title, it's not about anything. It's really just about your peers in that world of just having gone through that and the challenges of pregnancy and all of that. I just think those kind of moments I think are the life moments because they're the ones that really bring out your humanity, which is not always easy to bring out at work. It's not because I don't know about you, but I'm always trying. I would say, always trying to create this perfect persona, this A type, I can do anything and I know the answer to everything. And to me, watershed is like the shift to saying, I don't know, being vulnerable, asking for help, and admitting when you just didn't get it right.
So I completely get that. I was actually just having a conversation earlier this week. And early on in my career, it was about the title, it was about what the role was, how many people was I leading. And today it's none of those things. I can remember, just I probably work more. I work harder now than I did maybe 20 years ago, but I'm not chasing something. And it's almost because I've been able to relax and let go that things actually come to me more than forcing them. So I completely get that. And then, the project that you talked about in failure, the reason why I'm here at Coforge is one of those similar projects. I worked for a year on something very big for my employer. There was a team of 45 people. And I missed one comment at an executive dinner by the decision maker that he would never sign an ELA ever again, that he had a bad experience.
Mm.
And I kind of heard it. I just thought I can overcome this. And at the end, we made a really compelling proposal. And he just refused to sign off on it because he had a bad experience with an ELA.
Yeah.
And that was literally Coforge called me the next week. And it was one of those times where I just felt like I couldn't go back to transactional. I really enjoyed the strategic element of that. And so I completely get that. So you went to Cornell, you studied industrial and labor relations.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about how your time there and, even some of the childhood impacts. I mean, your perspective on work, maybe some familial impact, and how does that differ from your view today?
Yeah. So I don't know that Cornell or that schooling had much of an impact on work. Maybe it reconfirmed I'm a worker, not a student. Like I wasn't ever. I mean, I was a good student. I worked really hard, but I wasn't a natural student. I just wasn't. I think people either are or they aren't. I always wanted to work, and I grew up. You talk about familial. Like my parents owned a very small business, doing something. They made copies of fragrances that they would private label for like drugstores or jewelry stores or things like that. And it was run out of the basement. So we were one of those houses that, it was very different, right? You walked in and you could smell the perfume and the fragrance. And I mean, we used to come home from school down to the basement using the crimp machine to crimp the bottles, package them in the boxes. The whole family was off to UPS. My dad would take the boxes in and then we'd grab whatever we could for dinner. And to me, that kind of shaped my whole view of work, which is frankly part familial, the nature of hard work and also the nature of, good and bad years, small business. I mean, it was never consistent. It was never really easy. It confirmed that I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to kind of go out on my own. And I mean, my first job was at Deloitte on the audit side of the house. I don't think you can get more conservative than that. So I definitely think that shaped me. I went to Cornell and the Industrial and Labor Relations program because I wanted to be a lawyer when I started out. And then, I had this vision of like Law and Order, let's argue. I was on the debate team. Most people are like, once they know me, they're like, I get it. And that's what I wanted to do. And then I had my first internship my sophomore year, and it was like, read all these books. And going back to not being a great student, I was like, when am I going to just get into the action? And it led me to consulting because my first internship in consulting was just complete. I was at the Administration of Children's Services in the Bronx, and it was like, you could not get more into the action than that. And it was amazing. So hopefully that answers your question. But I think the growing up and having that experience of just like work it was just injected into like who I am. And I really believe in work. I know we're going to get into it, but I think work is an underestimated force. And I'm glad AI is bringing that conversation more to the table because I think it's a really important one.
So I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I tell people my first job was selling hot pretzels on a street corner by Brooklyn College.
There you go.
And it molded my view on what it takes to actually be successful.
Yeah.
I think being a New Yorker also has that impact. So there's so many questions around being a New Yorker. I live in Boston now, so it was pretty hard, the transition. Mets, Yankees, Jets, Giants. There's all of those questions. So where did you grow up in New York?
So was born on the Upper East Side, born in Lenox Hill Hospital. Moved out to Long Island. That's where I spent the majority of my childhood. I like to say exit 48 off the LIE for any New Yorkers, because if you grew up in Long Island, you know exits. And it was great. And then literally went to college in upstate New York in Ithaca, as you know, and then moved back to the city. And that's where I was for the first 20 years of my life, which was, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So I love the visual of the family business and walking in and the house smelling of the fragrances. And there are so many bodegas and small businesses, and there's a certain element of that that is, you just don't get in any other type of environment.
Totally.
Did you? So there's, I at least where I grew up, there was a huge sense of loyalty for your neighborhood, your family. For us, it was very ethnic in a good way.
Yeah.
Is loyalty something that you bring to leadership that's innate because of how you grew up?
I don't know if it's because how I grew up, to be honest with you. I mean, a little bit about me. I grew up on Long Island and I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, but my mother is Jewish, but my father is Catholic, Italian Catholic. And so at that time, it's become much more accepted now, but at that time, it was very strange. And so I don't want to say we were outsiders, but in a way, we were always very different. We really were. Like, my grandfather lived on Houston Street. We were in the city 3 times a week. Like, we had Thanksgiving in Chinatown. We just were like, we had a different world. And I think part of it was just like, we didn't go to temple, we didn't go to church, and we just kind of like were us. But as a family unit, we were very close. So maybe that's, the sense of loyalty. But I do agree with loyalty in general. I mean, my first job was Deloitte. I was there for 23 years. And I don't know that that's very common, to kind of, and it took a lot to decide to move on from that. A lot of people would have expected me to just retire at that same place. But I do think, I do like that concept of loyalty. I don't think it exists in the same way, but I'm loyal to the people I work with. I mean, that's why when you reached out, I was like, absolutely, Brian. We had a relationship, a working relationship, and I always want to be there for people, whether it's, whether I'm working with them or not. If they need my advice, my help, my support, my participation, generally, like I'm going to always say yes. And I think that's kind of the loyalty side of it. And I think that does come from like, if I'm 1,000,000% loyal to my family. My parents live 20 minutes away. We relocated them here, and, we're like an extended family unit. And I do believe in that. I want that for myself. It gives me great joy.
So in some ways, we've had parallel lives. I grew up in Brooklyn in a very Irish Italian neighborhood, Irish Italian Jewish.
Okay.
And my mother was Jewish. My father was Protestant. And it was the neighborhood was primarily Italian Irish. And everybody went to St. Francis of Assisi. And, the baseball team was all the same kids from the neighborhood, and it certainly was less acceptable back then. And we did everything. We had Hanukkah, we had Christmas, we did all of the various different things. It was not, I would say, a traditional upbringing, which has been really good for me in business as well, because I'm really accepting. I think more of it doesn't matter to me, what someone's belief system is as in outside of work, as long as they are willing to do the next right thing, they bring a sense of honesty and integrity to their role. And so it's really funny to hear you say that, because it was a description of growing up. So you talked a little bit. You mentioned your miscarriage, which I actually didn't know about, and that there are certain things I know. At a young age, I lost my mother, and that was what I would call really a watershed moment for me. It tempered who I was in many respects. Becoming a parent, being out on maternity, then coming back and having to go back into work. You've talked about how you grew personally and professionally. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe how being a parent has changed your style, so to speak, as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think radically changed my style. I mean, I became a parent later in life, partially because of how challenging it was to get to that point. Partially because I was so, I was focused on work, and honestly, I think it all worked out. But it just, to me, and it goes back to what I said earlier, it just makes you more vulnerable and relatable is kind of the way I look at it. It opens you up. I think people see you differently, right or wrong, as a woman. I think a lot of people, I mean, because I grew up at Deloitte, so people knew me. So it was like, she's never going to have a baby. I mean, after a certain time, it was like, okay, she's on the path to partner. She made partner, and now she's going to be a senior partner. And I think a lot of people wrote me off when I had a baby. It was like people had to accept this new person who I was. And they all of a sudden they started, seeing me in a different way. I wasn't always super polished, and I had to be more transparent, frankly, around what was going on. That was, I mean, I think that was a really big change. I almost think, though, the bigger change for me was going to ServiceNow as a mother. Like I came from an environment at Deloitte. They knew me from when I was 20. Okay. And I'm a very different person than I was when I was a 20-year-old college grad, like path to partner, let's go do it. And when I came into ServiceNow, it was an amazing thing. And I do tell people, like, to be able to enter a company as a wife, as a mother, and sort of know myself so much better. I think from the start, I was able to just like kind of share that part of myself, and people just accepted that's who I was. And that was kind of an amazing thing. A lot of people ask me, like, how was the transition? And I'm like, it was hard leaving a company after 23 years, for sure. Who knew you, who knew your brand? But actually, it was an incredible gift entering into a new company and letting them see me for who I was at that moment, not all the things they thought I was from the 20 years I had been there. And being a mother was so important to that. I mean, my kids are, I think most people would say their kids are their world. I have two boys. My oldest is turning 7 next month. My youngest is 2.25. I literally just came back from the dentist, his first ever dentist appointment. And it's so joyful and exhausting and exhilarating. And, you're so proud. And, my son, my older guy, we were just in Mexico, he went surfing for the first time, and he conquered his fear in the ocean. And there's just no better feeling, around that. And I love sharing that with people. And I think it brings people in, which is cool. And just that relatability. So it's changed me a ton for the better.
I would say that parenthood is, if there was anything that I wanted in my life, it was to be a great father.
Mm.
That was number one on my list, and I have been successful in that. I have to say, you would, if you ask my children, that's what they would tell you. I have a boy and a girl, and I just am amazed because at every age, you think this is just so great. And now, like my son is 29, he was a Salesforce admin and came home one day and said, "My job's going to be replaced by AI. I need to go back to school and get my master's in AI and all of the coaching that went along with that." And my daughter's on the other end of the spectrum. She's a mentor for young girls at the Boys and Girls Club of America,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
is completely, totally uh, um, does the only thing she cares about technology or business is that what can she buy off of TikTok, and you know um, are her apps working? So, but the conversations as they reach adulthood, 29 and 23, are it's just such a cool thing to watch them become adults, and so every stage is absolutely wonderful. Tell me, um, managing that work-life balance. I know you traveled a lot.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that? I've worked remotely for 20 years,
Oh,
and so I've had just that advantage. How did that work for you? Because you had a very, you know,
it was
public
demand,
facing job.
and honestly, it changed between my first and my second for sure. And COVID drove a lot of that. I mean, my first, I was at Deloitte. Uh, by his first birthday, he had traveled 72,000 miles. I mean,
Wow.
it was just come. It was me, him, and the nanny. And I always like to preface when I talk about work life balance that I have a lot of support that a lot of other people may not have. And so I think it's really important to contextualize that in any story. So, but literally that was the first year. We were just all road warriors together. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And then COVID hit, and, you know, and then travel came back. So it was like a roller coaster. It was like year one, we were around the world. Year two and three, we were just like parked here, just like both my husband and I were just in continual shock because we were both road warriors. And then we're just like home. Our office was the dining room table. We moved, we got a new house. We needed offices. We were like, what is this universe? And then, travel picked up again. And by the time of my second, my first was really, good about it. My second just was kind of born into understanding it. I think for me, it's a couple of things. One, it's just being transparent about your time with everyone. Like I need to go here. I need to be here. I mean, for me, I block my calendar from 4 p.m. onwards. Just like, cause 4 p.m. the nanny leaves and it's just like that transition. Please don't book a call with me before 7:15. Otherwise I won't even have time to shower because the nanny doesn't get here until 7. But it's like, so it's just creating those rules, which by the way, will continue to morph. And of course there's a million exceptions. I'm sure someone will listen and go, but I was on a call with you at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like, yes, you flex. But I had to have that kind of infrastructure in place to know those barriers existed just to give me confidence. And then just being on the road, honestly, like when I'm on the road, maybe this sounds horrible, and maybe because my kids are young, like we don't FaceTime or call because they get so upset. They don't understand. They're like, it's like for them, it's like, okay, mommy's here or mommy's not here. And I feel like we tried a couple of times of like FaceTime and calls. And especially for the younger guy, he was like reaching into the phone, just, not. Now with my older one, almost 7, I feel like we're at the point where we can do that. But I think it's just about being present when you're there. And when I'm on the road, I'm on the road. Like I'm working. And truly, it's, to me, at some point, it's like, I know people say it's work-life integration. I've written papers about it when I was at Deloitte, and I understand that. But in a way, there are moments where I'm like, there's work and then there's life. And I needed that separation in order to just kind of compartmentalize. And when I'm at work, if I'm on the road, I can't be like, I have to just be there. But when I'm at home, it's the same thing. Like I want to be present. no phones to the extent possible. Not always possible, by the way. It's hard. And, your kids always remind you, right? Like, if you ask my kid what I do, he would say, you're on the phone, so they're seeing that. And so I just think you have to be deliberate about it to remind them, actually, no, I'm with you and only you at that time.
They really
Not
are.
easy, but Brian, it's not easy. Like, let's just be clear. And, I hear all these stories. People always ask me this question, and I'm always like, it's just not easy. And some days I'm like, I could be like, I have failed, or this is hard. And some days I'm like, I'm nailing it. And most days I'm like somewhere in between those emotions. Every day is like a wake up call to say, how do I feel today about this life that I've carved out? But this is the first time in my life that I have not been working for a period of time. And it was an amazing thing. I mean, we were away as an extended family with my parents, kids, my husband, everyone for 5.5 weeks, and
Wow.
had nothing to do except be present. And it was an incredible, incredible gift for myself and for the family. And I think you need those moments to kind of say, okay, am I ready to go back all in?
Are you ready to go back all in?
I don't know. Honest answer, I don't know.
So every year we go on vacation to Cape Cod. And every year the family buys me for my birthday a pottery class, which I absolutely love. I have a throwing wheel in my basement. And the thing that I love about it is you can't be on your phone. It's such a spiritual thing. It's like you need to be present in the moment, pressing the clay, feeling the thickness of the wall. Do you have enough water? Is this the shape is there an air bubble in the clay? Is this the shape that you that you were intending to have it? And to be able to be absent from that work environment and present completely in a moment is just sounds like what you were able to experience with the family. So I just think that's awesome. One of the things that we talked about, and I really appreciate your authenticity in our conversation. We talked a little bit about that when we were going back and forth in email.
Yep.
Being an authentic leader and what is missing in business today. I talked about that master's in business authenticity. So what does that look like for you in practice, in real practice, being an authentic leader and leading teams and even mentoring one-on-one an individual?
I mean, first of all, I think it starts with acknowledging what you know and don't know. I don't think people do that enough. I think that there's no more powerful phrase than I don't know. It opens up conversation. It allows people to sort of have an even playing field. And so I feel like, and I was on an interview call yesterday and someone said, I don't think you're the most expert person in this. And I said, I totally agree. I don't think I'm an expert at all, actually. And so just that acknowledgement, because not everyone knows everything. And I think leaders who think they do, of which there are many, are the least authentic. And they have a total inability to connect with their teams and motivate their teams because they create this persona that feels so out of reach. And I think that's the most dangerous thing. I think you have to be within reach for your team if you want to really inspire them. And so to me, that's what it is to be authentic. Listening, just listening and getting to know people, picking up on who they actually are, like who they are. I've seen leaders who don't do any one-on-ones. That always floors me. The first thing I do ever when I lead my team is schedule my one-on-ones. And it's not to check on their work at all. It's just to hear them. It's just to hear what's going on. What do you want to talk about? I don't have an agenda. What do you want to talk about with this time? And maybe it's personal. I've had employees who just want to can I tell you about what my son did? Yes, let's do it. Or they really want to dive into the work. And I just feel like you get to know them, you get to see them. And that makes it authentic because you're learning who they are so you could relate to them. I think that's really important. Um, and then it goes back to just admitting failure, admitting when things aren't going well. And then just no walls, no barriers. If you ever talk to a team of mine, I would hope one of the things they would say is, God, when I work on Erica's team, I just always feel informed. I hope as a partner, frankly, you guys felt informed, right? I mean, one of the things I did was those quarterly business reviews. People would come to me and partners would say, like, you were so transparent about the business. And I'm like, I don't know why I wouldn't be, like we're in it together. Like if we're in the boat, like we got to all know where we're going to, where we're coming from, what the waters look like on the boat, on the trip ahead. And so I just think being authentic is about sharing of information. I think there's too much like hoarding of information for power. No, power comes from informing everyone, and then you becoming the person who informs them makes you powerful, in my view, versus the hoarding of information. All, to me, that's all part of being authentic. And I just, the reason I said like, wow, it's such a good topic is because I see so many leaders today that they just simply don't possess that skill.
So I just had a call with my team. There's some pivoting going on. We're growing like crazy. And there was a structure to the call, and it quickly devolved into just let's talk. I mean, we used to have time to be able to, on Friday afternoons, we'd get together, people would share recipes, we'd just chat, we talk. We haven't done that in a long time. And I could tell there was angst that was going on. And so we moved away from what we were supposed to talk about. I did cover that eventually very quickly, but I think they just wanted to, as you say, be heard, be seen and be heard. I mean, that's what people are looking for in their lives, in every aspect of their lives. And I always say everyone needs to be as solid as they can be at home. And then they will bring their best self to work. And if something is happening at work that is impacting their home life, then you don't have a chance. And so I don't probe, but I know. I mean, I know I can joke with one of my people is taking their son to Alabama. He's a huge Alabama fan. So he went there and, everything is Alabama. So, when we get on, I ask him, are you going to LSU? Or, I know what button to push. And so I think it's critically important. One of the things that's changing, and we can't have any conversation without talking about AI and the world of work that we're in. What are you seeing, the conversations that you're having? You said you were having an interview. AI is just the pivot that keeps pivoting. It's, a really fluid environment. What are you seeing out there in terms of that?
I mean, I think AI is going to be transformational. I think comparing it to the cloud, I don't think it's the same because it is, what I did at Deloitte was I led a human capital practice. We focused on workforce, and workplace transformation. And we always talked about the impact of technology. And I think AI more than anything is going to fundamentally change the nature of work. I mean, you're already starting to see the lists, white collar, entry level jobs, are going to be impacted. You're seeing it with the job market. You're seeing it with college grads struggling. I think that's real. I really do. And I also think AI in a way, and the power of AI is still overstated. I mean, AI is amazing. I mean, I personally use it. I think it has incredible power to transform the way you work, but it's still missing lots of things that are needed that you get from humans. And I know we're talking about, super intelligence and everyone's putting out their statements. It's going to take time to get there. And in that time that it takes to get there, new jobs will be created. New types of work will be created. And so I think we just have to go back to that fundamental knowledge that yes, work will be replaced and yes, new work will be created for people. I actually think the most important thing that is happening right now, which I love to see, is so many leaders, especially in tech, are talking about human skills. What's needed for humans? Like they're using that word more and more. I mean, I helped introduce future of work at Deloitte 15 years ago. No one would. I mean, I would talk about human. People would be like, I don't know what this woman's talking about, right? Like now it's in the lingo. That's huge. Microsoft just talked about this AI Academy that they're really developing and investing in to invest in humans, creating those skills. Like we're starting to see that. And that's what gives me encouragement is like the companies understand and you need to invest in the human side here. And and I think as a result, we're going to see a lot of goodness get created. The key is we have to prepare people. And that's what I think about with my kids, like 2 and 7, I'm like, what will college look like? I'm not sure. What jobs will exist? I'm not sure. What I need to cultivate in them, and you're talking about writing a book. I'm actually writing a children's book because I think it's such an important concept, is nothing is a bad idea. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility. Like I think to myself, I'm sure you feel the same way. Like when I was growing up, you were a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. That's it. I mean, that was it. Okay. And it was like, which one of those 3 do you want to do? And I was like, a lawyer, right? I mean, that was the conversation. If I had said to my mom, you know what I'm thinking? I think I want to be an influencer. My mother would have been like, get into your room and practice your flute. I don't want to hear this again. Tell me what 3 jobs you want to pick. Like that would have been the entire conversation, start to finish, boom. And it would have been over. And so we have to bring that curiosity forward for our children to prepare them for what this new world is going to be. And I think if we focus on that and not on the like AI is going to take over the world, we'll all get back to a better place and create a better world. And I do think we will create a better world for ourselves. It'll have some rough patches, but we'll get there. And the technology will push things forward scientifically, exploration wise. Like I think it'll be incredible how it pushes humanity forward. We just have to remember the human in humanity is first and foremost.
So that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I love the description that you gave, doctor, lawyer, teacher. My mother was a teacher, my father was a doctor, my brother was a lawyer. I broke the mold. I became a carpenter. I actually was trained classically in high school as a carpenter and didn't go back to college till later on in life because I loved working with my hands, and it drove my mother crazy. She was an art teacher, so she was a little bit more of a less strict about what do you want to do when you grow up. But I did test her patience, absolutely, for sure. So I want to be respectful of your time. A couple other things. One is you've talked a lot about storytelling. That's a big topic for us. I have this new role building out a communications function here at Coforge. I love storytelling. For me, that being able to frame something early on in a conversation and then bring, as we've done throughout this podcast, brought different stories that have shed light on things. Talk to me about the power of storytelling. Is that natural to you? Did you build that muscle?
I think it's part natural and part experience over time. I agree with you. I think storytelling is the ultimate superpower. I really do. I mean, you tell a compelling story and you capture people's attention, you capture their hearts, you capture their minds. And you can really, this goes back to like the human spirit. You can get them to believe in what you're doing, and then you're unlocking that human potential. And then you're gangbusters, then you're like, wow. Now let's see what this puppy can do when we unlock that potential. And that's what I think storytelling does. It frames the conversation. What I tell people is, I think I'm a natural storyteller, but I practice. I think people don't practice enough. They don't practice what they're saying. I'm in the shower. I'm like, if I'm about to give a speech, I'm trying to remember, certain points that I want to make. What are the 3 things I want to get done in my speeches, going back and saying 3 things, referencing, giving them markers to be able to follow. A good story needs to have all those things. And you don't just, people always ask me, like, how do you do it? You just get up there. I'm like, I don't just get up there, like I script write it out. I practice it. And I think that's what people miss. They think it's like you either have it or you don't. It's like, yeah, maybe I had a running start to it, but over time I had to hone that craft, just like you would with anything you do. People have natural talents in lots of things, and it doesn't get them to the pinnacle unless they practice and rehearse and put in the time and effort. I always like to invest in my teams building that storytelling capability. Not that everyone's going to be an amazing public speaker, but everyone should understand how to tell a compelling story of what they want to do, why the change needs to happen, and how they're going to make it happen. That's like fundamental.
There's nothing I love more than being on the main stage. It's the thing that just lights me up. But there is nothing, sometimes you have to spitball, but I do the same thing. I look at what it is I have to present, or I think about the experience, the arc of the event that I want someone to have. And then I actually speak that into my phone. And I then email that to myself, and then I rewrite it a little bit because the spoken word and the written word are a little bit different. And then I practice and practice and practice. And why? Because I want to be able to focus on the nuance that comes. What is the point of using this one particular word? Connecting emotionally with someone. I don't want to be struggling trying to find what word to say. I want to know exactly what I'm going to say and try and elicit that emotional response. There's a great songwriter, Jason Isbell, that does Americana, and he talks about struggling over a single word in songwriting and how impactful that can be. I really believe that. So, one thing you want to leave with listeners, call to action, leadership advice, anything that you can think of that we haven't covered?
I was going to say, we've covered so much. No, I think these conversations are so important, because people can listen, find themselves in it, get one piece of inspiration or encouragement or confirmation, and then it just helps them go on with their day. That's why I love these kinds of podcasts. I think that's what they're for. Everyone needs to find kind of their one thing that just sparks them or makes them feel like, oh, wow, I feel the same way that person does. Or Brian said something that really resonates with me. And if I did that for one of your listeners, that's an amazing thing. It was worth the time.
Well, I appreciate it. I will look forward to seeing what your next adventure could possibly be. You always talked about partner first. I have to say, you brought that dramatically to the field. It was impactful even after you're gone. And there is not a more partner-centric organization that we were working with at the time than while you were there at ServiceNow. I really appreciate that. It was a game changer for Coforge. And, I wish you the best of luck on the journey, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. So good to see you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erica.
All right.